This is Real Conversations with Anita, a mental health podcast brought to you by Iltizam by Ikunas and MIASA Malaysia. Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, I'm Anita, your host for Real Conversations with Anita. Now before we kick off our episode for today, we have some exciting and awesome news to share with you. Real Conversations with Anita is now proudly sponsored by Iltizam by Ikunas. It is a CSR program under Equity National Berhad, where they are all about helping the Bumiputra community to grow and thrive through fair and sustainable development. They do extraordinary initiatives, everyone, including disaster relief, food provision, the preservation and cultivation of art, heritage, and culture, and alongside initiatives promoting health and well-being. And of course, one of their area of focus is mental health. Through this partnership, MIASA Malaysia and Iltizam by Ikunas, we will be tackling the stigma surrounding mental health, and we will be supporting you in having these conversations. Big shout out to Iltizam by Ikunas for sponsoring this podcast, and we look forward to working with you. Assalamualaikum and a very good evening, everyone. We meet again on Real Conversations with Anita, mental health podcast brought to you by MIASA Malaysia. Today, I'm truly excited because we have this particular guest that will be with us for the next 45 minutes, where we will be unpacking the taboos surrounding mental health. Someone that I've known many years now, more than 15 years actually. He is a corporate figure. I know that many of you know that I come from the banking and investment world, which is many years ago. And so this guest that we have today is my former boss, Mr. Simon Chow. Welcome, Simon.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming to our show, Real Conversations with Anita. Truly humbled to have you here today. So how are you feeling?
Thank you so much, Anita. It's a real privilege. And
welcome.
Yeah. Actually, the first time, I think it's because of you, and first time I was actually in front of a live audience or any sort of audience or recording, anything like that. I think it's something that you arranged when we were working together.
Yes.
So you're bad news for me, I think, because, as you'll find out, I'm quite an introvert actually. So I don't like to be in front of a mic or a camera. But yeah, it's great being here.
This funny dude, but also a former boss of mine. So Simon, thank you so much for coming on our show, and of course for this show, for everyone's information. So what we do every single week is to really talk about taboos and also stigma surrounding mental health. So I'm sure you're fully aware, when we talk about mental health, there is a lot of stigma. Perception is typically negative. When we talk about mental health issues, what more people living with the condition.
Yeah.
So hopefully through stories like yours, especially coming from the corporate world, which is, typically known as, you've got to have everything all together. There's this facade that you have to maintain in that sense.
That's right.
But hopefully listening to your story and maybe some of your struggles as well, or maybe struggles of others that you've heard within your own workplace setting right now, that could possibly inspire other people to reach out for the help that they very much need and require. Yeah. Okay, so to begin, Simon, can you share with us a little bit about your background and how did you embark in this field?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer of Ireka Corporation, Berhad. So the company is basically a property development construction company. I joined 2.5 years ago with the new management to help take over the company to turn it around. It's going through some difficulties, so it needed a new management team to turn it around. But I've not always been in property in real estate.
Right.
Actually, for most part of my career, as you mentioned earlier, I've been in investments.
Okay.
And I started off as a stockbroker back in the 90s. I've seen the bull run, Asian financial crisis.
That was awesome times, man.
Yeah, very, very interesting times.
Yes.
I've also then moved on from stockbroking into asset management and investments, and that's where we met.
Yes.
And then also had a short stint with the stock exchange, Bursa Malaysia, before embarking into the tech space. So I spent a little bit of time in tech, HR tech specifically, before COVID hit, and then I lost my job during that time. My professional career mainly spent most time in investments. But yeah, now this is a new endeavor for me, and I'm really enjoying it. It's very fulfilling.
When you talk about, all this that you've experienced, what's the stress level like in comparison when you started off, being a stockbroker and then witnessing the bull run, and then now being in this situation where it's really tight and there's so much going on? How does that impact your mental health per se?
It's an interesting journey, especially for me, of self-discovery. And I thought, at 54 right now.
You are?
Yeah, I'm 54 years old.
Didn't have to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm. It's
More
okay.
wisdom, more wise.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's the general thinking, but it's not always true. And and really, that's why I say, it's you think you're so sure of yourself. You should be
Do you
at
still
50.
doubt yourself?
Of
Do you
course,
self-doubt?
I'm still learning. I'm still learning from my wife. I'm still learning from my kids. Maybe they don't think they're teaching me anything, but I'm certainly learning a lot from
Definitely, I
them.
can relate to that.
Yeah. I'm still learning from people I work with,
Sure.
how to do things better. I'm still learning from the things I've done when we're working together as well. It's still I still reflect on it. On what could I have
But
done?
that's the thing about you, I always remember this is so key about you is you are not ashamed to say that you don't know something, right? So even when you came in, as the CEO and you were like, I don't get it, Anita, can you explain this to me? And I was like, wow, for somebody in that position to actually admit openly that you don't know and please teach me.
Okay.
So you always had that in you, where you
But it didn't.
that desire to learn. So no ego.
No, it's not that. I think I didn't have a chance to have ego. I mean, if I was in investments for many years and then, gone to a position and I'll be then marking orders at people,
Right.
I think my character would have, done that to me. But in a way, I was fortunate. Right, the person who I am, I'm always wanting to learn from other people,
Right.
and there's reasons behind it, and from childhood, not trauma but experiences.
We can talk about trauma as well.
Yeah, but I was really helicoptered into that position,
Right.
and so what do? Do I simply just bark out orders? And I think I've seen people do that before,
course.
right? They talk through their backsides, and because they're the boss.
Right.
But I didn't want to be that boss. Maybe that's the difference there. But I
So you
didn't
were
have,
mindful about that, right?
definitely, yeah, definitely. I didn't know everything, and I believed. And later on, through some readings, I know I don't do a lot of reading, but some readings that if you do not know, then you empower others, and people who do know, and then you help manage them.
Right.
And as a manager, then I saw my opportunity and privilege to then help these people grow and thrive and do well in what they do. So my role was then to run interference,
Right.
make sure the other stakeholders don't come and interfere with what you do, and you're given the tools, resources that you then
Right.
do your job properly.
Right.
So then I saw it that way. Instead of guiding you on and say everything A, B, C, D, you need to do it in this way. So I hold true. I still do that now.
Right.
I'm helicoptered into a business which I'm not an expert in. So then what can I do? I just help them do the best that they can do.
Right. I mean, that's key though, because when you empower people, right, the right people to do the job, then they become successful. Then it's success for everyone, right?
Correct. And it's
that's how you do it.
so empowering and so rich. I mean, you feel so fulfilled. I mean, that you can see the person maximize their full potential.
Exactly.
It's an amazing feeling.
Okay, so coming back to the stress level, Simon, so how's that like?
The way I look at it, I think at different stages of life, I face different challenges.
Right.
Not only at work. So at home, then it also adds on to the pressures, right? So as an individual, as a growing adult, as someone that's contributing to society, I think as you move through the different stages of life, you first as a fresh grad, and then you're newlywed, maybe you get married newlywed. This is just the common. I'm not saying everyone goes through this, but maybe you have a kid, you buy a house, not in that particular order, but you have a lot of layers of pressure on you, right? Your parents get older, you take care of them, and then add on to that, the different type of stresses that you have at work. So I think stress is always going to be there,
Of course.
right? And growth comes through this
Right.
pressures, right, and stresses. So I can't say one particular stress was more than the other.
Is it because you know how to manage it better now?
Not really also. I think now when I look backwards at just the most recent months and years, then I get the realization I'm like, okay, this is really affecting me and it has got an impact on me.
Right.
Had I been a 25-year-old, maybe it wouldn't have, because maybe my body is more resilient to certain type of stresses, or I'm healthier, but it can recover and recuperate faster. I get better sleep, whatever it is.
Right.
But I think age plays a role. How healthy you are,
Definitely.
right? How fit you are.
Of course.
So all those things. So I think if you are a machine and you say, okay, if you're faced with certain things like, oh, you need to, go through a rationalization program at work. If I was 25 years, I think I'll face it differently and I'll maybe react differently.
Right.
But now at 54, it plays a different impact on me. I think it has a different
Definitely.
impact on me. Yes.
Got it. Yeah. I think also as we grow older, we understand not to sweat the smaller stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think for me, that is how it's been. Because usually, typically when we're younger, even the smallest thing, we are very and extremely reactive in that sense. But now, oh, that's just something small. I can handle this. And if something bigger comes our way as well, then we are more mindful in that sense.
But that's the thing. It doesn't come necessarily with age. You realizing it now. Me too. I'm only realizing it just recently.
Right.
So it's my wife teaching me after 20 years. How long have I been married? I think more than 20. My wife's been killing
Probably
me.
she's not a snake.
Yeah. But her telling me don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah,
and I
don't
never
sweat.
listen.
Yep.
Because I want everything to be perfect.
No, but it's so, I'm the same. And I remember when I was 18, 20 years old in the States, I was waitressing during the time part-time. And this one dude comes to me because he's a regular customer at the restaurant. And he gave me a gift. It was a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Because he said, every time when I come in, I know you're a perfectionist. I know you want everything to be okay. He said, but you're so highly strung. Let me just give you this book. And he's an accountant.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, read this book. And
Wow.
since then, I read the book and I've kept the book and I tell people about the book.
Okay.
But now since you mentioned it, I now remember the book again. But it's don't sweat the small stuff, man, really. Interesting. Okay, so Simon, now you spent some time studying abroad.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? How has that, those experiences maybe shaped you, and what was most memorable for you?
Wow, a lot of memories. Actually, I studied in Singapore for my O's and A's.
Okay.
So actually in secondary school already,
In Singapore already.
my parents shipped me off to,
Didn't really like it that much, huh?
yeah, no.
Okay.
Shipped me off to Singapore at an early age of 13. So I stayed in a
wow.
boarding school.
Oh, how come I never knew this? Okay. Awesome.
Then after that, I did my A's, my O's. Then I did my undergrad in Australia.
Right.
In bachelor's degree in commerce, bachelor's commerce. Then came back, worked a little bit, and then did my MBA in the US.
Right.
So studies all overseas, but work mainly in Malaysia. Yeah.
So what was memorable for you?
I think every instance, of course, at 13, it was traumatic. All right.
Kan.
It's the huge shift.
Especially Singapore, right?
Okay,
Is
that part culturally is almost similar. People around you look the same, so it's okay,
Right.
not so jarring. But just not being in the home environment, not being with family around you.
Boarding, was it a boarding
In
school?
boarding school.
Oh, boarding school.
And then young boys, ranging from 12 to 16 years old.
Wow, all the hormones, right?
Not only that, but it's just tradition, right? The older boys are
Oh,
bullied.
bullying, yes.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Right. Did you
And-
get bullied?
Of course.
Did you bully others later on?
And then later on, we took it like, okay, it's our right to bully people, right?
Gosh.
But I think at that time when we became the seniors, the brothers, because it was run by Christian brothers, and us in general, I think we knew better than not to. Why do we just have to repeat this just purely from tradition? Because our year was kind of the turning point. We did less of certain
Nice.
traditions.
Stopped.
We stopped. Yeah, stopped.
Awesome.
Some of the-
Congratulations.
no, but it was not because I don't think it's just one factor, but also
Right.
the juniors were also like, hey, this is wrong, and they spoke
Oh,
up.
they're more vocal.
They were more vocal as well.
Awesome.
So it's a combination of things.
Oh, okay, all right. So, what kind of challenges did you face, would you say, during the time in Singapore, especially because you were younger, right? And out from the family, more independent in that
Just
sense.
being alone, yeah, trying
Being
to be
alone.
independent, trying also because
Did you come back home often?
not that often. So the longer holidays, we used to take the overnight train back to KL.
Nice.
Yes, that was quite nice.
Yeah.
So I can still hear the clicky click
Yeah, I know.
train tracks in my head. But yeah,
Right.
You play games on you. But yes, and then people, because we used to be in we had bunk beds, and and it stopped more frequently.
Right.
So all the stops, people hide under your bunk, so they don't have to pay tickets, the
Oh my
fare,
God.
and then they get off the next
Right.
one, or people coming on board to sell snacks and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah,
So nobody would check their tickets?
no.
Oh, okay.
Just the people in the bunks, and they will just check. But you hold onto your bag, make sure no one
Betul.
steals it. Yeah.
So how was your mental health state during the time, though?
I don't know. I can't think
Can't
that far
recall.
back. I mean, we went through a lot of stresses. Obviously, being bullied, being by yourself, not being. I mean, you really having to figure out how to get along with other people as well. I grew up really by myself. I mean, I kept to myself. I only had handful of close friends.
Okay. Siblings?
And then, yeah, my brother, but I was not really that close to him.
Okay.
And he made friends easier, not me. It was harder for me to make friends.
Okay. He was an extrovert?
Not
Not really?
necessarily, but
Okay.
yeah, I think he's a bit more outgoing. He was 2 years my junior. He joined me in Singapore after. soon
Ah,
after, yeah.
okay.
And I've got 2 younger sisters.
Right.
I used to bully them a lot. I didn't understand why.
Okay.
Until I have kids, then I
Right.
know sibling rivalry is very real.
Oh, it is.
And that's why
Certainly.
I didn't really get along well with my brother as well.
Right. But you're okay now?
Not really also. So we still haven't closed that
Right.
that
That gap, no?
that gap. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you wish you were closer, though? Do you want to mend it?
I just wonder how it
How to
would
go
be
about doing it.
Yeah, that plus also it will seem very foreign to me. Most of my life is because while we were in secondary school, that was the only time we were really like in close proximity.
Right.
After that, we went our separate ways. He studied elsewhere. I did my undergrad so I went on to do junior college A levels.
Right.
And then Australia for my undergrad. He went to the UK to pursue architecture.
Okay. But is everyone here now?
Yeah,
Oh,
so my brother's here in KL. My sisters are in Australia.
Oh, okay. So they're
Settled there. Yeah,
PR there.
they are now citizens now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you remember most about your childhood in terms? Because when I ask people this question, it's really interesting because for many, their hardships during their childhood has really shaped a lot of who they are today, and they become more resilient and they're more driven in that sense because they have gone through so much challenges and adversities in life. But for you, like you said, so you went to Singapore at a very young age, and then having to be alone, being apart from the family, and trying to figure out life and all of that. And this was during your teenage years. This is when we start developing, all around. So what would you say? What was that like for you?
I don't know. To me,
Is there a turning point?
Not really. I
Not
mean, it was
really.
just a progression, right? And I think later on at least the first 4 years, just really how to make friends, get along,
Right.
and that friendship was very important. And the friends that I made there, especially in my year, we still keep in touch now. A drop of a hat, they ask anything, not a problem. In fact, I just met my old housemaster, who is 86 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, he's living in Vancouver, and he just dropped by. So I've not seen him in 40 years. So it's great to see him again. Organized by my year mate.
So it was like a reunion?
But a
kind of
small
thing?
one, yeah.
Small
But
one.
he's doing his rounds. He was Singaporean. He might still be Singaporean, but a PR in Vancouver. So he was just doing his rounds. It was just great to see him again, and then recollect on old memories and stuff like that. But it also showed a different angle. When we were in secondary school,
Right.
we saw him as the disciplinarian, walking around, making sure everyone slept on time, didn't do funny stuff and all that
Right,
stuff. Like, we were boys, right?
Right.
Last week, he showed us a different aspect as an educator. how he moved through the school system and helped the school develop certain programs, build buildings. And I never saw that side of him.
Of course.
He was a bio teacher in school. We knew that much. But whenever we saw him, he was the housemaster, disciplinarian, right? Take care of the boys,
Right.
And if you have any problems, go to see him, sort
Right.
of thing. But never saw that part as an educator. And so last
Interesting.
week, he showed a different aspect. So that's why growing up, one-dimensional and just going. So quickly realizing you're on your own.
Yeah.
You're going to see your parents maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. And sometimes they will drive. So short holidays, they will drive down. But for a large part, you survive on your own. Friends are important.
Right.
So you need to know how to get along.
Right.
And then go from there, have fun.
Right.
So I was into sports. I didn't do very well in school.
Right.
But sports, athletics, I used to represent the school.
Wow.
So that I just basically have
Interesting.
fun. Yeah.
So what about when you were in the States though? So you pursued your master's. Well, what did you do? What master? MBA? MBA.
Yeah.
So,
It was a master's in international management at the time, but they converted the name. Long story. Yeah.
okay. So how was that? When you were in the States, were you alone again?
No, so my wife followed
So
me.
you married already
Yes,
during the time. Okay.
yes.
So you went to the States and then for how long?
It was almost 2 years.
2 years? Okay.
But we didn't anticipate like how much workload and how she would be alone.
Right.
So the complete different stresses. So we had just gotten married, we just gotten registered,
Right.
and then within a few months we flew over, up and left, and settled down there. And straight away, typically with these MBA courses, is just before you get in, you're already planning the exit already. Start applying for your job because within 1.5 years you're going to be out.
Right.
You want to make sure that you start earning again and all that sort of thing. And it was non-stop.
Right.
So I had very little time for my wife. She was left largely by herself. We were in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
Really,
Nice place though.
Sorry?
Nice place.
It was hot. It was
But
in the
it's
middle of
hot.
summer
Yeah,
when
yeah,
we
yeah.
arrived. It was hot. It was really, really hot.
Right.
Because it's a concrete jungle, right? And so for her, it was really very foreign for her. She didn't have any friends.
Right.
And she didn't know what to do during the day when I was at school. So it was quite tough at that time. Yeah.
So when did when did you realize that you had all these more mental health struggles or challenges? When did that come about?
Only more recently.
More
Now,
recently.
I think I can handle stress properly,
Right.
and I've been through several, stressful situations. But I think the most recent is when it really had an effect on me physiologically. It started manifesting itself with different aches and pains.
Right.
Started then weird feeling, and
Right.
that must have been like 5 years ago. It's now coming up to 6 years ago.
6 years, yeah.
And I didn't relate that to the stresses at work. But now thinking back, I can see it. And now also with the recent things I've been handling, I can see whenever I'm thinking about something, the reaction my body has to it. And I'm like, okay, this is anxiety that's creeping up.
Right.
But only recently.
Right.
So, but I think it's an accumulation.
It is.
My understanding of the subject. I'm learning. I'm
Right.
still learning.
Right.
And I said before, I'm experimenting on myself.
Right.
To try and figure out what's happening and how to get over it, or at least how to take control of it, own it, and then take control of it. Yeah.
Right. So what happens when you're feeling this stress or you're feeling anxious, right? Or anxiety kicks in. Can you walk us through what happens maybe through your mind, your body? What are some of the symptoms?
So again, it's like a journey. At the very beginning, or when I first started noticing it, it manifests itself differently.
Right.
From now, I know like when it's creeping up on me.
Right.
So I'm facing a difficult situation, or so these are the very direct ones. So they're direct, indirect.
Correct.
So the direct ones is, let's say, I had to handle more recently. When I say recent, it's actually a couple of months ago. There was a staffing issue,
Right.
and we were finding it very difficult to sort it out. So it took a long time to sort it out. So over weekends, when I have a bit more time to rest, it'll creep into my head. I'm like, okay, what do we need to do the next week?
Right.
And then I'll feel tightness in my chest,
Right.
almost like a ball in my throat.
Correct.
Sometimes even an ache all of a sudden will hit me in the side of my torso.
Right.
At that time, so about a year and a half ago, my blood pressure would go up. So I would
Right.
feel the back of my head
Tighten, right?
tighten.
Stiff.
I'll get headache.
Right.
And if it's really bad, I'll get headache.
Right.
My heart rate will go up.
Right.
And I'm not actually doing any physical exertion. So I'll get all that. My face will get flushed.
Right.
Face getting flushed is one telling sign as well. So at that time, that's what will happen.
Do you get any twitches? Sometimes it'll twitch as well. Your eye can twitch. Your
I
muscle.
did have twitch. I also did have tightening of the jaw,
Right.
and it comes out as a toothache.
Right.
And so I used to go. So at one time, I used to go to the
the
dentist.
doctor?
Yeah, and I said, "Hey, my filling is probably doing something," and she will do X-rays, and I can't find anything.
Right.
So actually, all that through all those discoveries, right? So I'm thinking I'm having tightness in chest and high blood pressure. So I go
Right.
see a doctor, and he
Right.
says, "No, your ECG looks fine, or
Right.
your blood pressure is fine right now, or whatever it is." So it's a process of discovery.
Right.
I cleared, and I said, "Okay, most likely it's nothing about my heart, or I do have blood pressure issues and cholesterol issues, so I take medication for that."
Okay.
So that's under control. So there's no other reasons why all these things. And my doctor said, "Look," and my doctor started opening up. He says, "Look, he had anxiety issues when he was younger, and
Wow.
these are signs of it." He says, "It's most likely anxiety. There's nothing clinically wrong with you, but it's probably that." And so now only recently that I really come to terms and say, okay, it is. I've done all the tests and it can't be anything else. And I remember having that conversation with you as well.
Yep.
At one of my dinners, and it's like I had no one else to call who could understand, or I couldn't turn to my wife; she wouldn't understand.
Right.
And I called you and I
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I'm trying to swallow something I can't swallow."
Right. There's
And
a
you
lump
said,
in my throat.
"Yeah, this is anxiety." And I got this pain, and you said it's anxiety. And I said, "I got this feeling, it's anxiety." And I started laughing to you.
Right.
Because then I said, "Okay, good, I'm not dying,
Right,
so
you're not dying.
yeah, it's just anxiety. Okay, that's a good thing." So that's why I said,
Although it feels like dying.
exactly.
Right.
It's the worst feeling. As I told my wife, it's the worst feeling.
It is.
And
No
sometimes you wake up. So this is the indirect ones, which you do not know the trigger.
Right.
Like you're sleeping, how can you all of a sudden wake up with
Yep.
this feeling? So it's
Correct.
indirect. Your mind at the back is playing out these things.
Right.
And I can see now I'm realizing, like when people say, "Oh, they've got anxiety and they can't control it." Really, you can't control it.
Yep.
Your mind is so powerful.
It is.
Overwhelms, right? And
Yep.
also it's also got that the impact hormones as well, right? Once
Correct.
it hits, and then you fight or flight, adrenaline pumps in, and then your body doesn't know what to do with
Right.
adrenaline.
Yeah. It triggers. It's like an alarm.
Exactly. And if you're not actually doing physical exertion, then it's the worst feeling in the
Of
world.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's coming to terms with those sort of things and learning how to handle it.
Awesome.
But the thing is, when I tell people about it, also this is the other journey, internal and external. The external is when I tell people about it, because I want more people to say, "Hey, I'm talking so freely about it, so maybe it's not so bad to talk about it."
Right.
Problem is when you talk about it, and if you're not trained, I'm
Right.
not trained,
Right.
it might trigger the person. And when the person gets triggered, sometimes it also triggers me.
Yes.
My anxiety also shoots through the roof.
Correct.
So now I've learned to hold my tongue, not be so open with it. When I think I'm facing someone with it, and yeah, just don't try to be a smart aleck with it. So I think the curse is, if you know, you still it doesn't give you permission to talk about it if the person is not ready to accept it, because you can make the person worse.
Right.
But if you don't know, also don't pretend to know. I remember going to see a doctor, and I was explaining, because I had one episode, I was talking to one of the accountants, and we were talking about, he's a gentleman is a lot more senior
Right.
than me, and we were talking about how he handles stress, because what he was handling was very, very difficult things.
Right.
He's basically handles liquidations, so on the legal side, and he was explaining to me that when he was younger, he used to bring these things back home with him, and he would then, pass it on to the wife or the kids, take it out on them,
Right.
and they would be stressed then. And then he obviously had a conversation with the wife, don't do this and all that. So he was trying to teach me to distance myself, separate myself, job from the person.
Right.
And as I was hearing this, because I could relate, right? I'm bringing all these stresses back home as well. I could relate, and my anxiety started going up. So I told him, I said, can you please, I need to stop. I cannot go on.
Okay.
And I ran across to the doctor.
I
said,
see.
Doctor, my BP is going up and everything. Doctor says, okay, you're okay.
Right.
I can tell you it looks like anxiety, but I cannot tell. I cannot understand it because I never felt it before.
Right.
And then it really hit home. Even doctors who can tell you
every
textbook,
symptom. Yep.
you got anxiety.
Yep. But they only know theory, you see.
But they cannot. And I felt relief at the same time. Like, wow, and you could see in his eyes. He said, I can't relate to you. If I broke my bone, I can tell you I broke my bone before. That's fine. And then I can tell you, oh, you're going through this pain, what to expect.
Right.
But if he's never experienced anxiety, then he can't tell you, is your mind partly is that's doing this to you.
Right.
So that was interesting. So all this is learning, and through this, and I think what I want to do is then be an advocate for it, but also be a bit sensitive to the fact that not everyone wants to hear this message as well.
Right.
So yes, it's a taboo, but on the flip side as well, you have to be very careful with the messaging.
Thank you very much. I think it's interesting hearing what you just said, because what we advocate at MIASA is, of course, to normalize it, right? So normalizing it as in, just talk about it openly and freely. But again, be mindful of the choice of words, of your language, vocabulary, how you're communicating. Because again, like you said, it could activate, some internal processes that people are not ready to deal with sometimes. So it's more about coming from a place of empathy, but holding that space effectively. But how do you do that? So that requires a little bit of training, I would say, a little bit of skills, right? It's not enough just reading a book, I would say. And it takes a lot of practice as well. It's a little bit different for me. I mean, we've been around 7 years. So 7 years of practicing and doing it and holding, safe spaces and all that. Thank you very much, Simon, for sharing that. I hope it was beneficial for everyone. We will be right back in Real Conversations with Anita. It's awesome if it works, if we're able to do that, but how do we actually realize that, right?
I think first it starts from the top. You want to make sure that everyone, so the top management needs to be able to work in that environment. Then you cascade that down.
Yeah.
If they are still very traditional, then you're not going to have that cascading down.
Yeah. I remember there was this one peer that came to us and she said that she was so intrigued and inspired actually when her own CEO in one of the meetings said that, I live with depression. And he started sharing about his struggles, and it inspired his staff members to actually open up about their struggles as well. So like you said, because sometimes we think we put our bosses or whoever it might be, top management at a very high pedestal. So we think, oh, they're perfect, everything's fine. But we forget that they're humans too. They also struggle. And it's even harder for them because then they have to keep that facade, and then they're the leader. And then sometimes leaders also think, oh, if I were to maybe share that I live with a mental health condition, then there's stigma, and then people might think, oh, I'm crazy, or whatever labels it might come. But there's also shame and fear. So it's the same both ways actually, for the employer and for the employee, right? Interesting. Thank you very much, Simon. Now, how would you assess the resilience of employees today, especially the differences between the generations? Because we hear this a lot, right? The younger generations are not as resilient, and the older generations are more resilient because we had a tougher life, etc., and so on and so forth. But what's your take on it?
I kind of disagree with that narrative or the understanding of it. I mean, we classify the younger generation as a bit more fickle, a little bit stressed, they run and all that.
Right. They quit faster.
But my experience with them is that they are a lot more, how do I say, for lack of a better word, professional in the sense that they will try their very best.
Right.
And they know their limits. And beyond that, if it breaks and says it's not working for them, I leave. Whereas for the older generation, my generation, we keep a little bit in reserve. Right? I think it was like something like a management tool. Peter Drucker says, keep a bit of slack so you have bargaining power. So, or some people will say, put it another way, work smart, right? So don't show everything to your boss, right? You work only a little bit, show so that you can outperform. So it's a KPI issue again, all over again. So they're a bit more resilient because they have a bit more in reserve. I think companies should then look at output.
Yeah.
right? And I mean, in terms of performance,
Right.
is don't be too fixated on how much pressure I put on the staff. Oh, that everyone has to work 9 to 5, or rather, actually, they have to work extra hours. So what happens when you say they have to work extra hours? They drag their work out so that they look busy
Right.
for 10 hours, 12 hours of the day. Whereas the new generation will say, oh no, I'm going to work 8 hours because I value my
My time.
time, and I work like mad for the 8 hours, right? Get what I need to get done, and then go and enjoy my life. And then so the older generation say, you're softy, you just have to stick with that. The older generation work 12 hours, 14 hours.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily good or productive. And in the end, actually, you suffer, right?
Right.
If your whole life just revolves around work, then what sort of human being will you turn out to be? Unfortunately, that's how I was working, right? 14-hour days, 12-hour days.
Because that's what you do, right?
Yeah. As I said, my life, I try and reflect, and I say,
Right.
okay, this is not the way to do it, or at least if I can't, then make sure that your staff don't suffer the same things.
Right.
Yeah. So at least learn from my lessons.
Okay, awesome. Now, what do you hope to see more of, Simon, happening in the workplace in terms of supporting the mental well-being of employees and employers both?
I'm a bit old-fashioned. I
Yeah.
like to take a little bit of a middle ground. I don't think we should go overboard in, like everything's mental health. The company is there to do a business,
Yeah.
right? And so they're profit-oriented, let's say like in general,
They are.
right? And so then they have to drive this. No. However, if now I look at ESG matters as well.
Right.
So it's not just profit, but it has to benefit the general community, the wider range of stakeholders, right? But all that the same, in that space, the company has an objective to meet. Now, these are issues that the company needs to face. Now, how do you face them? With mental well-being, we need to create a space that staff can, employees can take care of these issues. Same that if they came and say, okay, crime or bribery is an issue, or sexual harassment is an issue, how do you do that?
Right.
We don't then clear the whole space and say, okay, we have to be super sensitive, everything we do is about sexual harassment. No, but I think we need, first and foremost from the top, awareness. That awareness is very, very important. So that the supervisors know how to handle these sort of situations. Same as sexual harassment, right?
Yeah.
Oh, these things are, in our culture and in our society, right? Asian, Malaysian, certain things were, inverted commas, acceptable 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Not acceptable now, right? The receiver is a lot more intelligent and
Right.
a bit more sensitive than
Right.
saying, hey, this is not the right thing to say. So we need to be aware, top down. So the supervisors and management need to be aware of these sort of things. Provide a space where they can go and seek help.
Right.
Where are the avenues? There are not enough of them, so we need to
They're not.
make sure to promote more and maybe even help sponsor these. So not necessary to have a clinic in the company,
company, yeah.
right? But provide avenues to do that, right? Counseling avenues. You don't have to get a counselor in, but maybe get one in, maybe frequently, but you don't not full time employee as a counselor sort of thing.
Right.
Depending on if you're a large organization, then maybe you can afford to do something like that. Then maybe there might be reasons to do that. So I will take the middle of the road approach, but do not. What I'm also saying is do not ignore that this is real. The issue is real, right? It affects, as long as your workforce are humans.
Yeah.
AI is not going to, hasn't taken over yet, and I don't think for the near future it will. As long as they're humans and they have ability to think intelligently, they're also going to be susceptible to mental health issues.
Everyone is.
Exactly. You cannot define rich, poor, old, young, right? Handsome, not so handsome, good looking, or not good looking.
Rich, poor.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be exposed to that. It's just how they will able to handle it. And then whether you're going to fall into that, what I call the spectrum.
I think also people have different perceptions when it comes to, like you said, not necessarily a counselor in-house, but actually counselors, they're not just there when you have a
problem or an issue, but they're also there if you want to optimize performance, as an example, or you want to maximize your potential, right? So they are there to help you do those types of things as well. And I also believe in more mental health promotion and prevention as well, because you don't want to bring them in when there's a problem, right? So you just have them in like how you have a clinic at your workplace, right? Or a doctor at your workplace. So they could be there for all sorts of things. And I also feel that when you have in-house counselors, then they can potentially help if you were to have a family member that's struggling, right? Then they can be your point of reference as well. So there's, many different ways and roles that counselors can play within workplaces as well. And not just limited to counselors. You can also, like what you said earlier, about empowering your employees. So you can empower not necessarily HR, but anyone that wants to maybe take up that role, becoming peer support specialist, right? So they, people that are more passionate for the cause, then they, garner more skills, knowledge, and they can then support someone that's struggling in the workplace. So there's really different ways of doing it as well, where you don't have to fork out other resources. You can just use what's available as well. So thank you so much, Simon, for sharing that. We are going to come back in real conversations with Anita, with Mr. Simon Chow, the Chief Operating Officer of Ireka Berhad. Simon, we are at the last segment of the show, and maybe I just want to ask you, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What are your coping mechanisms? When you go through a mental struggle, what do you do? What happens?
Okay. Nothing to do with hobbies though.
So nothing to do with hobbies?
No.
Okay.
Because I don't leave myself, I don't do that, give myself enough time for hobbies.
You should.
I know. But if you ask, in theory, it would be spend time tinkering my cars, or even fixing models. And if I had a chance, jigsaw puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles.
I do too. I haven't done a jigsaw puzzle in a while.
Exactly, me too.
We should do one together.
Yeah.
The 1,000 pieces one.
That's 5,000 is the way to go, man.
No.
That's more challenging, I think.
That'll give you a lot of stress.
No.
No? You find it therapeutic?
Exactly.
Awesome.
So if you occupy your mind with something a bit more menial. So I tell people sometimes if they see me in my office, polishing my shoe, that means I'm trying to just
block out everything.
And I just polish my shoe.
Wow. I can bring you some shoes.
Yeah. They'll be very clean and polished.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So no, I don't give a lot of time for my hobbies, but in general, that would be it.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been trying different things, and lately it's one that is, I don't know what you call it, multitasking. So it's basically it's just sitting down and you either can open or close your eyes, but just make conscious thinking of 2 points in your body.
Oh, okay. Like a mindfulness technique.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Okay.
I saw it on TikTok, actually.
Okay.
So one is like, for example, you think of your right foot and your left shoulder.
Yep.
And just think of those 2 points for a few seconds and then shift it.
Right.
To different parts of your body.
Right.
And it just occupies your mind and takes it off whatever is troubling you. I find it works.
Awesome.
Maybe I'm small-minded and only can think of 2 things. But hey, it works, so why not?
Exactly, man.
So that's what I use.
Breathing techniques?
So I can't remember, it's one of your doctors, I think, on one of your programs, the breathing exercises.
Yep.
So be regular and consistent with it. Don't only just do it when you're stressed.
Of course.
Yeah. So I'm learning. It's a learning experience for me.
Awesome.
Breathing exercises, I think that is the consistency. So that's my coping mechanism. So I go through a few different steps. But first and foremost, to quickly realize that I am getting, my anxiety is maybe going up, my blood pressure is going up. Quickly acknowledge that, and then try to take those steps. Because sometimes I can't take myself out of the situation, right?
It's not easy.
I need to be in a meeting or whatever it is.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So I work through it. But if then I recognize the stages. If I'm really extreme, then I do need to excuse myself, and then I just tell people I need to go.
Do you get panic attacks though?
Sometimes, a lot more rare now, but I do get it. And
But then if you get a panic attack, then you've got to excuse yourself, right?
Yes.
Because there's no way
yes, exactly.
you can face it
so
in a meeting.
I take a cheat. I take some meds for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because otherwise it goes off very, very quickly.
Correct.
So I need to take my
Your meds.
Yeah. and it works. So I'm thankful that it does.
Okay.
But I try not to rely on it. So lately, I take less of it. So recognizing stages helps.
Right.
And then really also recognizing when it's the really extreme and yes.
And taking medication is also okay. Some people need it, and
Yeah.
for some people, they find it really helpful.
Yeah.
So I think, you do you kind of thing.
Correct.
Yeah, and then, but at the same time, explore what other means and ways
Exactly.
that can help you. What about maybe more exercising? Do you do any of those
Unfortunately,
sorts?
no. But yeah,
Should.
I came in phases. There was one
Yep.
stage where I actually exercised quite a bit, and then they went away. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm trying to get back on the horse, as it were. But coming back to meds, I think it's very important. I think for me especially
Right.
to take mental note. I'm lazy, so I don't journal or anything like that.
Right.
But mental note of my journey.
Right.
So when I do take my meds, I realize that after a 12-hour period, the anxiety level sort of like it gaps, So I have high anxiety, take my meds, it goes down.
Right.
12 hours, it goes back up to the same.
Correct.
But it deferred the time period.
Correct.
So I actually recognize that. So I know it's going to come back and hit me soon. So try to handle
So you
that.
do something to manage that.
Correct.
Okay.
But at least it's taken me out of the environment.
Correct, correct. So, Samir, really curious about, for a lot of men, right?
Yep.
They feel there's shame, right?
Yep.
Talking about mental health struggles. What makes you different? Like, why are you okay in being vulnerable about it?
I'm getting older. That's so
even
when you go already. I'm not 25 years old.
Even for older people, I mean, as long as you're a guy, there's always some certain shame that you carry. Even for women, but more
Right.
so for men, right? Because
Right.
you're perceived to being, leader of the family, you're a guy, tough,
So I say to myself, if Anita can do it, honestly, I tell you seriously, you are a big factor.
Oh
And
my
it's
God,
like,
thank you.
you tell people, so what? Did it diminish me? I took the one step towards getting better or getting stronger. And by admitting it didn't hurt me.
Not at all.
It might help someone.
It might.
In fact, I spoke to someone, I will not name names. And he did this in a meeting.
Right.
After the meeting, I went up and says, you get this, and then you got all these others. And I said, yeah, I don't understand it. Sometimes I wake up cold sweat, and I say, it's anxiety. He says, I went to see a doctor, they cleared everything. It's okay, I don't know, everything's okay.
Right.
I said, yeah, do you get this? Do you get that? Like what you did? I said, yeah. I said, it's anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God.
He felt validated as well,
Yeah,
right?
he was with his partner at that time, and it's like, yeah, I'm so worried,
Yes.
So quickly, I mean, it was a serious meeting. It was
Right.
a very serious meeting. After the meeting, and she switched into partner mode. So yeah, he's like, he's like this and all that. She's so worried. I said, yeah, but treat it. I mean,
Right.
because if your BP goes up
Right.
and it's not controlled, you
Yes.
can have other medical problems.
Of course.
So quickly recognize, treat it,
Yes.
so that you can control it.
Awesome. Okay. So what are you learning now, Simon? That maybe I should be learning as well.
It's a process. It's a process of discovery. For me, the learning part is how powerful the mind is.
It
I think.
is.
It's just scary,
It is.
and you might not have full control over it, and it's your own mind. But
yeah.
So the acceptance and letting go. I think letting go is very important. Don't sweat the small stuff, as you said. Honestly, I'm not joking.
Yep.
And then so you find your life a lot simpler.
It is.
No, I'm not saying don't strive. Strive for your goals, and you achieve them, you feel euphoric, that's great. But don't get so fixated on that expectation. Don't
Right.
hold on to it so much so that it kills yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes life, you're meant to fail have small failures or have these failures in life.
Which is
so
good.
you can learn your lesson.
Of course.
But if you hold on to it, you'll never learn, and you then make excuses for it
Right.
and blame other people. Then the stresses come in.
Yeah.
Then the loss, and then not meeting that gap, the expectation gap. That's when all your anxiety comes in, right? You're always striving for those things
Right.
that maybe never meant to be.
So would you say you're a better parent now because of these experiences and realizations that you have today?
It's still a learning process for me.
Yeah.
I do regret certain things that I did when my kids were growing up.
Yeah.
I try not to. Of course, I don't repeat them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be quite hard on my daughter, and I think then she's become then a ball of stress. So I'm
Right.
trying to then say, okay, recognize this, please, early on, and don't do certain things, don't repeat my mistakes for sure.
Right.
Hopefully they learn from my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, then I'll be happy. Like, I can't turn back the clock. I keep telling them I can't turn back. I wish I didn't do certain things. Yeah, learn from those lessons. So hopefully they learn, they don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the most important lesson that you've learned, from your journey growing up, to your working life, to maybe being where you are today? What would you say? Maybe just one thing that you felt either that was a turning point or that was hit you at your most vulnerable or whatever it might be. What do you think it is?
I think that not to be so critical about yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. And my general message, don't be so hard on yourself. Be the best that you can be. Don't compare yourself with other people. They're living a different life.
Yeah.
You live your own life to the best you can. Most importantly, be happy. Really be happy. I'm not, it's cliche, but be happy with what you're doing, because life is so short.
It
Just
is,
enjoy your life.
It's funny, right? Because when we're young, it's so different how we think when we're young,
Yeah.
and then when we're older, and we used to hear whatever you're saying right now, right? Our parents used to say all of this to us,
Exactly.
and the people that were older than us, but we were like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when we're older, and we have the same mindset.
Yeah.
And then how I personally wish that I had that mindset when I was younger.
Yeah.
But then no, we had to go through that same process again. But hopefully now we're able to shorten that process for our kids.
Yeah.
And this is the hope, right?
Yeah.
For them not to realize late, right? For them to be taking care of their mental health now,
Yeah.
their physical well-being now.
Exactly.
For them to know that which should we be prioritizing, right? That life is not just about work, right? Life is about everything, right? And having that more of a balanced way of managing everything. And like you said, just enjoying all the moments that we go through, right? I
Exactly.
think it's so important. Like
Exactly.
sometimes we even forget, like that's why before we went into the podcast, I said, enjoy the podcast.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Yes, you
Right?
did. Yes.
Because then, it's just stress. Because
Yeah.
if you take out the joy, then
Yeah.
everything else is stress, man.
Exactly.
Nothing else is left.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so last question for you. Now, what's your message? I know you said the questions might seem kind of similar. They're actually not.
Yeah.
Okay, for those who might be listening right now who are probably struggling, Simon, who can maybe resonate to what you just said about your experiences with your anxiety, how you discovered it, and about your journey in the self-discovery or journey to recovery, whatever it's called. But what would you say to those that are currently struggling and feel maybe a lot of shame or feel there's a lot of fear or they don't even have a support system?
Yeah.
How do they get back up on their feet?
The struggle is so personal, right? It's internal, right?
It is.
And sometimes when you look around, you don't know you don't know how to solve the problem, right? And sometimes it's so painful.
Is it about solving the problem though?
No, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
As I said before, it's about expectation already, right? The expectation that you can solve it, maybe.
Yep.
Expectation of certain goals, achievements, or certain standards that you're held to, and you cannot meet those expectations.
Right.
That's why I said, just let go. Don't be so hard on yourself. I think that's the most important message to me, to my kids, to anyone out there. Once you let go, when you learn how to let go, then half the problem is solved already. Then the rest all of a sudden say, oh, okay, actually it wasn't that important, right? Oh, I can't go out, I can't travel anymore because lockdown. I'm so depressed, because every year I need to travel one.
Yeah.
And I can't travel anymore. So
Okay, I'm the same, okay?
Yeah.
I am.
But then actually after a while you don't travel 1 year, 2 years is okay. And then when you can,
Hey, but there's a certain grief,
I know.
I
I'm not saying it's not real.
yeah.
But I'm saying don't be so fixated on, I have to have, it must come. And if you don't, then it's the end of the world for me. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. Obviously, it's not.
Yeah.
But
So-
it's painful.
Of course.
It is painful, though.
And so if you don't address it, it becomes
Yeah.
physically painful.
It
you
is.
will get
It
the
will.
physical pain.
Yes.
If your parents want you to do certain things and you don't do it because I have to meet my parents. No, you don't.
Right.
I mean, you can try. If it doesn't happen, then let go.
Right.
Once you let go yourself, then you find it easier to maybe talk to your parents or find another solution. That solution is easier to come in. But if you are so rigid within your confines of where you define your problem, no solution can come in.
Yeah.
So let go.
That's awesome, though, because there's this one book by Ustaz Mizi Wahid where he says, let go and let God. That's also really awesome. It's an awesome book. But yeah, that's also one of the things like what you just said, right? Let go, because it's difficult to just let go and then what? But then the follow up or follow through is let go and then let God, right? So because you've done your best, like you said, it doesn't mean that you're not saying don't strive.
No.
You're just saying do your best, do what you can, go for your goals. But then once you're done, then just leave it. Right? Which I think that part is a bit hard for a lot of people. And like you said, managing that expectation as well. Very interesting. So thank you so much, Simon. We have come to the end of the session today. It was awesome having you. Thank you so much, Simon, once again for being with us. I hope, I'm sure all our listeners, followers, and viewers benefited from your sharing.
I hope so.
Yes, thank you very much. And so this is our podcast, mental health podcast by MIASA Malaysia, Real Conversations with Anita. Every single week where we, break taboos, we talk about stigma, negative perceptions of society in hopes that we are able to support all of you who are struggling with any kind of mental struggles and challenges in your own ways, and hopefully you feel inspired, you find a way out, and also hope that this too shall pass. So thank you so much, everyone. I end this with wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you. This is Real Conversations with Anita, a mental health podcast brought to you by Iltizam by Ikunas and MIASA Malaysia.